April 8, 2009. Somewhere in the deep blue waters of the Indian Ocean. Gunshots shattered the silence. 4 Somali pirates had just stormed the Maersk Alabama 1A U.S. cargo ship on a peaceful mission. The crew locked themselves below deck. But their captain, he stayed above. Then, he did the unthinkable. He offered himself, in exchange for his men. What followed was a 4-day standoff. A lifeboat, a pistol, a sniper's scope. One wrong move, and someone would die. This is not just a movie. This is the real story that inspired Captain Phillips. And the truth is even more terrifying. Subscribe now to @Unbelievable True Story, and stay with us to the end, because the moment that changed everything was still to come. April 8, 2009, 5:45 a.m., Indian Ocean, 240 nautical miles off the coast of Somalia. The sun rose slow and gentle over the Indian Ocean. Warm gold spilled across waves, as the Maersk Alabama sliced through the water, calm and steady. She was a working ship, 508 feet long, steel gray, no frills. Her mission, deliver food aid to Kenya. Nothing more. On the bridge, Captain Richard Phillips, 53, stood with coffee in hand. A quiet man. Serious. Professional. 20 years on the sea had taught him how to read both sky and silence. Down below, the 20-man crew was busy with routines, engine checks, container logs, breakfast on the go. They had done this before. Nothing ever happened out here. Nothing ever would. But then came the call. From the radar room, small boat approaching. Fast. Phillips looked up. There it was. A speck. Then another. 2 skiffs. Speeding. Closing in. And suddenly, nothing was normal anymore. 6:01 a.m. Pirates, someone whispered. The word cut through the ship like cold steel. On the radar, the boats were now 7 miles out. Then 5. Then 4. The crew scrambled. Phillips took the mic and spoke calmly. This is not a drill. Lock down the ship. Get to safe areas. Move fast. Engineers rushed below deck. Doors slammed. Bolts turned. Radios crackled. Above, Phillips stayed on the bridge, watching the horizon, watching the boats come. They were real. They were armed. And they weren't slowing down. 7:04 a.m. They came with AK-47s. The ladder slammed against the hull. A thin rope. A barefoot man. Another. 4 in total. All shouting. All pointing rifles. They were young, maybe 17, 18. Skinny, sun-dark, desperate. Led by one, Abdwali Muse. He was no older than 19. But he had the gun. And now, he had the ship. They fired shots in the air. Where's the captain? Muse shouted. No one answered. The ship was a maze of steel and silence. Phillips knew the risk. He stepped forward. I'm the captain, he said. Muse turned to him. Their eyes locked. And that moment changed everything. 8:12 a.m. The crew had gone dark. They hid in the engine room. Killed the power. Disabled the steering. The pirates had no way to move the ship. They were now trapped, alone on the bridge with a calm, steady man named Richard Phillips. Muse was growing angry. His voice rose. His hands shook. You lie. I shoot. Where is crew? Phillips gave nothing. The hours passed. By noon, it was clear, the pirates weren't in control. But neither was Phillips. And in the shadows of the engine room, the crew was preparing to take their ship back. 1:45 p.m. Crew member Shane Murphy, the first officer, led the effort. Using the maze of steel walkways, they sneaked up behind the pirates, disabling one, capturing another. They had leverage. And then came the offer. A trade. The pirates could go, but they'd take the ship's lifeboat. And they'd take Phillips as their hostage. He didn't resist. He climbed in. Calm, quiet. A man walking into the unknown. The lifeboat detached. And drifted away. And so began the 4-day standoff that stunned the world. April 8, 2009, 3:12 p.m., Indian Ocean. The lifeboat rocked gently in the water, orange, sealed, floating alone like a steel coffin on the open sea. Inside, Captain Richard Phillips sat grand among 4 Somali pirates. No windows. No air. Just shadows, sweat, and silence. The air was stifling. Smelled like rust and salt and fear. Muse, the pirate leader, held the pistol. The others had AKs. Tired. Paranoid. Angry. Where's our money? Muse kept repeating. You are American. Your government will pay. Phillips didn't respond. His hands were tied. His lips were dry. His heart beat steady, slower than it should have been. He was buying time. 3:40 p.m. 120 nautical miles away, alarms rang aboard the USS Bainbridge, a Navy destroyer with 300 sailors on board. The call was clear. Pirates. Hostage. American captain. Immediate response. Captain Frank Castellano took command. Within hours, the ship was speeding toward the drifting lifeboat. This was no longer a merchant problem. This was a U.S. military operation. April 9, 2009, morning. The Bainbridge spotted the lifeboat by dawn. It circled at a distance, watching, waiting. A second Navy ship, the USS Halliburton, arrived soon after. Then came the USS Boxer, a massive amphibious assault ship. 3 U.S. Navy warships. Against one tiny lifeboat. And inside that lifeboat, Richard Phillips was still alive. 8:25 a.m. Through loudspeakers, the Navy called out. We're here to help. Let's talk. Muse peeked through the lifeboat's hatch. Gun still raised. We want money. $5 million. Then we let him go. He wasn't bluffing. But he was outnumbered. And the Navy was just getting started. Behind closed doors, White House Situation Room word had reached Washington. President Barack Obama was briefed personally. National Security Advisor James Jones watched satellite feeds. The order was clear: try negotiation. But be ready, if deadly force becomes necessary. The standoff was no longer just about the captain. It was about America. And the world was watching. April 10, 2009. Phillips hadn't slept. Neither had the pirates. Inside the lifeboat, the mood had turned darker. Muse, young and ambitious, wanted to talk. He asked to come aboard the Bainbridge, to negotiate. Captain Castellano agreed. But only he could come. It was a trap. Once Muse stepped onto the destroyer, the door closed behind him. He would not be going back. Now, there were only 3 pirates left with Captain Phillips. And all of them were growing desperate. April 11, 2009. The Navy saw the change. The pirates were erratic. Angry. Tired. They'd run out of water. Of fuel. Of options. They tied Phillips tighter. Pointed a gun at his back. The Navy moved SEAL Team 6 into position. Snipers. Trained for 1 shot, 1 kill. They had eyes on the lifeboat. 3 pirates. 1 hostage. All it would take was a green light. And 3 clean shots. April 12, 2009, 7:03 p.m. Phillips was visible through a small window. 1 pirate stood behind him. Another peered out the hatch. The third held a pistol, close to Phillips' head. Suddenly, Phillips lunged forward. A scuffle. One of the pirates raised his rifle. That was the moment. Command given, execute. The SEAL snipers fired. 3 bullets. 3 kills. Instant. Precise. Over. 7:04 p.m. inside the lifeboat. 3 bodies fell. Phillips sat still. His ears rang. His body shook. But he was alive. 7:08 p.m. Navy SEALs boarded the lifeboat. Carefully. Guns raised. They untied Phillips. Lifted him out. He blinked at the sun. Took one breath. Then another. For 4 days, he had stared death in the eye. Now, it was over. He was going home. Richard Phillips called his wife from the Navy ship. He said only a few words. "I'm safe. I'm okay. I'll see you soon." Across America, the news broke. Captain rescued. Pirates killed. SEALs save hostage. Headlines called it a miracle. A hero's sacrifice. A Navy's precision. But behind every headline was a man who had made a choice. Richard Phillips never claimed to be brave. He just did what he had to do. This is a real story. Every fact you hear is public. You can check it yourself. If real-life mysteries leave you breathless, subscribe now to @Unbelievable True Story. Because the next truth we uncover might hit even closer to home. April 13, 2009. Just one day after his dramatic rescue, Captain Richard Phillips stepped off a Navy aircraft and into the arms of his wife, Andrea, at a military base in Mombasa, Kenya. The cameras rolled. Reporters shouted. Flashbulbs popped. But Phillips said almost nothing. The real heroes, he told them quietly, are the Navy. The SEALs. The crew. I just did my job. Back in Vermont, Phillips' hometown. In the small town of Underhill, Vermont, flags flew. Windows were plastered with hand-painted signs. Welcome home, Captain Phillips. Our hero of the sea. Neighbors wept on camera. His children clung to their mother. Reporters camped out in the snow, waiting for a glimpse of the man whose calm defiance had stunned the world. But Phillips stayed inside. He didn't want fame. He just wanted rest. And yet, the world had other plans. April 2009. CNN. BBC. The New York Times. The Today Show. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. Because this wasn't just a hostage crisis. This was America's first confrontation with modern piracy. And it had ended with a sniper's bullet. And a legend. Meanwhile, news in U.S. custody. Thousands of miles away, one of the hijackers, Abdwali Muse, sat in a cold New York jail cell. He had come aboard the Bainbridge thinking he'd talk terms. Now he was in federal custody, charged with piracy, hostage-taking, and use of firearms against U.S. nationals. He was 18 years old. But under U.S. law, he was being tried as an adult. The courtroom buzzed with tension. He spoke no English. He looked confused. Alone. Some called him a terrorist. Others saw a child, dragged into a war he didn't understand. May 2009. The world had seen the rescue. But few understood the disease beneath it. Somalia, a country broken by civil war since 1991, had no working government, no navy, no jobs. Fishing waters were stolen by foreign trawlers. Toxic waste was dumped near the shores. And so, young Somali men turned to piracy, out of poverty, anger, and desperation. At its height, piracy off Somalia's coast was a multi-million-dollar business. They didn't just take ships. They took oil tankers, crew members, weapons, lives. And no one seemed able to stop it. Who was Abdwali Muse, really? Back in the courtroom, lawyers revealed Muse's life. Born in a poor Somali village. No school. No electricity. Survived on goat milk and ocean fish. At age 15, he boarded his first pirate skiff. He was promised money, enough to feed his family for years. He never imagined he'd end up in an American prison. He's a pawn, his defense lawyer argued. The real villains never leave the shore. By now, the real Richard Phillips had become a household name. He appeared on 60 Minutes, NBC Nightly News, and Time magazine. He wrote a memoir, A Captain's Duty, that quickly became a bestseller. Hollywood called. And soon, the world's biggest actor, Tom Hanks, was playing him on screen. Captain Phillips. The movie was a hit. Directed by Paul Greengrass and nominated for 6 Oscars, it told the story from Phillips' point of view, the sacrifice, the courage, the rescue. Audiences wept, cheered, clapped. But there was one problem. The crew didn't agree with the story. In 2013, as the movie hit theaters, several Maersk, Alabama crew members went public. They said Phillips wasn't a hero. They claimed he ignored warnings to stay 600 miles off the Somali coast. He sailed too close to save time. He endangered everyone to meet a schedule. He's no saint, one sailor said. He played tough and got caught. A lawsuit followed, against Maersk and the shipping company. The case was eventually settled quietly. But the damage was done. The myth had been questioned. In 2011, Abdwali Muse was sentenced to 33 years in U.S. federal prison. He is currently held at a high-security penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. He'll be in his 50s when he gets out. The Maersk, Alabama was later outfitted with armed guards. Pirate attacks in the Indian Ocean decreased dramatically by 2015, due to coordinated naval patrols and onboard security. But the damage of those years left scars. Over 1,000 sailors taken hostage worldwide. Dozens killed. Millions paid in ransoms. A coastline haunted by ghosts and broken families. And at the center of it all, one orange lifeboat that drifted into history. This is not fiction. Every detail is part of a real case that you can verify yourself. It inspired Hollywood. It shocked Washington. But the people behind it were real. And some of them never truly came home. April 12, 2009, 6:58 p.m., USS Bainbridge. The sea was still. The sky, blood orange. On board the USS Bainbridge, 3 SEAL snipers, anonymous, invisible, lethal, lay prone on the deck. Each had one target. Each had trained years for this moment. They didn't blink. They didn't breathe. The command would come in 2 minutes. Inside the lifeboat, final moments. Captain Richard Phillips felt it. The air. The weight. The sound of the waves. The pirates were growing louder. Sweaty hands clutched rifles. One waved a pistol too close to his face. They screamed into the radio. "Bring back Muse, or we shoot him." No more negotiations. No more threats. Just a man tied up, surrounded by 3 desperate boys with automatic weapons. Then, something changed. One of the pirates raised his rifle. And from 75 feet away, one of the SEALs saw it. 7:03 p.m. Commander Frank Castellano stood just behind the snipers, radio pressed to his ear. He had asked President Obama for clear rules of engagement. He got them. If the hostage's life is in imminent danger, you take the shot. Castellano made the call. Execute. 7:03 and 15 seconds p.m. The snipers adjusted for wind, distance, sway. 3 shots. 3 heads. All pirates. Dead. Instantly. Inside the lifeboat, Phillips dropped flat. Blood sprayed. Bodies fell around him. But none of the bullets touched him. The precision was surgical. Years later, one of the SEALs spoke, off camera, under condition of anonymity. "It's the hardest shot you can take. Close quarters. Moving water. A hostage in the middle. We had less than 5 seconds. And no second chances." Another added, "You don't celebrate after a shot like that. You don't cheer. You just breathe again." Secret recordings, the audio no one heard on board the Bainbridge, tapes rolled throughout the standoff. Though most have never been released, classified briefings reveal chilling fragments. The pirates shouting in broken English, "America lie. We shoot him now." Phillips calmly repeating, "It's okay. Take me. Leave the others." A Navy commander whispering, "We have the shot." Repeat, "We have the shot." The tension on those tapes, officers said, was unbearable. You could hear men deciding if another man would live or die. In real time. When asked how he survived, Richard Phillips replied, "You don't have time to panic. You just breathe. You hold on to any detail you can. I thought of my kids. My wife. A red coffee mug I left on the ship's bridge. You think small. Because thinking big would destroy you." Months after the rescue, the SEALs involved received silent commendations. No names were released. No photos taken. The mission was classified. Their identities erased. But one medal citation read, "For extraordinary heroism in the face of overwhelming tension and risk, and the preservation of innocent life." After the rescue, the Maersk Alabama returned to duty. But it was never the same. Crew members resigned. Some struggled with PTSD. Others couldn't sail again. One later wrote in a blog post, "You don't just get back on the water. You start seeing pirates in every shadow." Before 2009, U.S. cargo ships were rarely armed. After the hijacking, that changed. Insurance companies demanded armed guards on high-risk routes. Naval escorts increased. Satellite tracking became more aggressive. Piracy off Somalia dropped 90% over the next 6 years. And yet, the threat never vanished entirely. In his U.S. prison, Abdwali Muse faded from public view. He was allowed no interviews. His family in Somalia never saw him again. One report suggested he cried for 3 days after his sentencing. Another said he had trouble sleeping, still hearing the sound of the waves crashing against the lifeboat. No one could confirm it, because no one ever visited. This is not fiction. Every word here is based on real court records, Navy reports, and eyewitness accounts. You can verify it all. But what you can't do is forget it. When Captain Phillips premiered in 2013, it stirred global attention. But for those involved, it reopened old wounds. The crew protested. The Navy stayed quiet. Phillips, as always, kept a calm face. One interviewer asked, "Do you ever replay those 4 days in your mind?" He smiled faintly. "Only every time I close my eyes." The lifeboat today, the orange lifeboat, where the standoff happened, was kept in storage for years. Eventually, it was displayed at a maritime museum in Virginia. Visitors stare at it in silence. It looks smaller than you'd expect. Just 28 feet long. But inside it, one of the most dramatic rescues in American history took place. April 2009. After 4 days as a hostage and a global rescue that captured the world's attention, Captain Richard Phillips returned home to Vermont. Flags waved. TV vans camped outside. The nation called him a hero. But in the quiet of his home, away from the press, Phillips wrestled with something darker. The nightmares. In one, he's still in the lifeboat. In another, the gun doesn't miss. In the worst ones, the SEALs don't arrive. Some of the crew didn't share the world's admiration. They told a different story. That Phillips had been warned. That he sailed too close to Somalia, ignoring maritime alerts and U.S. advisories. "We begged him," one crew member said. "He didn't listen." Maersk denied wrongdoing. So did Phillips. But the tension between him and the crew never healed. Lawsuits were filed. Some settled quietly. Others fizzled out. But the damage to the bond between captain and crew was permanent. Phillips wasn't the only one struggling. Crew members reported panic attacks, flashbacks, fear of sailing again, survivor's guilt. One engineer wrote anonymously, "We laugh in the photos, but inside, we never got off that boat." Muse's family speaks, rare interview. In 2012, a BBC journalist tracked down Muse's mother in a small Somali village. She lived in poverty. No phone, no TV, no knowledge of courts or laws. When shown a photo of her son in handcuffs, she cried. "He is a child. He only wanted fish." She insisted he had never hurt anyone before. She begged to speak with him. She never did. After 2009, the maritime world changed. The U.S. Navy and international forces launched Operation Ocean Shield, patrolling waters off Somalia. Merchant ships began arming their decks with ex-special forces. Crew members were trained in hostage procedures. Piracy dropped. But it never ended. In 2017, a pirate crew hijacked the RS-13 tanker. In 2019, attacks resumed in the Gulf of Guinea. In 2023, piracy cases spiked again off the coast of Somalia. The Maersk Alabama hijacking taught the world one thing. Modern piracy was real. It wasn't folklore. It wasn't old men with swords and parrots. It was young men with nothing to lose. And an ocean that didn't belong to anyone. Everything you've heard is real. Every bullet, every cry, every whisper through a radio. It happened in April 2009. And its echoes still roll across the sea. Tom Hanks meets the real Phillips during filming of Captain Phillips. Actor Tom Hanks met Richard Phillips in person. They talked for hours. Hanks said he didn't want to talk about the hero stuff. He just kept saying, "I did what any man would do." But that wasn't true. Most men don't volunteer themselves as hostages. Most men don't sit in a lifeboat, staring down a pistol, buying time with calm. Most men don't survive with their humanity intact. The lifeboats coast today. The Maersk Alabama is still active, though renamed and reassigned. But the original orange lifeboat is now behind glass. Visitors touch it, pose beside it. But some say, it still feels cold. Still smells like rust and fear. Still echoes, faintly, with the voices of boys lost in their own war. Why did Phillips volunteer himself? Why was Muse the only one who survived? What was said during those final seconds, inside that lifeboat? Why do stories like this disappear so quickly? Once the headlines fade? Some questions have answers. Others drift with the tide. April 2024. 15 years later. Somewhere in the Gulf of Oman, a cargo ship cuts through the blue. Another crew. Another journey. But down in the engine room, taped to a steel door, is a photo. It's Captain Richard Phillips, wearing a navy ball cap, smiling. The caption reads, "He came home. So can we." Have you heard this story before? What would you have done if you were the captain? Was this bravery? Or a gamble? If real-life stories like this move you, subscribe now to @Unbelievable True Story. Because every week, we bring you true stories that feel like movies. Click the next video, or explore our playlist of real crimes and mysteries. The next story might be even more unbelievable.